Let's tackle the question a lot of you are asking. Why hasn't the Department of Justice charged anyone else from the Epstein files? Let's discuss. I'm Dave Ehrenberg, former state attorney for Palm Beach County, a.k.a. the Florida Lawman here on Substack. Thank you for your support. It was a great live Q&A that we had with our paid subscribers. Thank you for joining us. And if you haven't upgraded, please consider doing so. And we'll also keep doing these free videos. But I'd love to have the back and forth. And thank you again for all your support here. So let's discuss this question, because one of the reasons why you're here is that you don't want the confirmation bias. You don't like the spin. You want to hear the facts. You want to get legal analysis that's just unaffected by the political tides. And when it comes to prosecuting people from the Epstein files, well, there was an interesting column written by a former DOJ prosecutor. His name is Ankush Kaduri. You've seen him on MS Now. I was on a panel with him once. He's also a senior writer for Politico magazine. And he wrote in Politico that there are some legitimate reasons why you haven't seen others prosecuted. Right now, I mean, the only people who have been held accountable as far as in the criminal justice system for Epstein's crimes are Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and Jean-Luc Brunel, who was imprisoned in France and died behind bars in a suicide. Now, no one else has been charged. Although you're seeing accountability around the world, you're seeing a lot of people losing jobs, losing positions. Prince Andrew was detained, arrested, but they have a different system over there. He's not really being prosecuted, and he's not a prince anymore, so that's accountability. But when it comes to the law, you need to have more for prosecutors than police need, which is just probable cause. Probable cause to arrest someone is relatively a low burden. When you want to prosecute someone, you need to have enough proof to get a conviction beyond a reasonable doubt. You have to have a good faith belief you can get a conviction beyond a reasonable doubt. So when it comes to whether or not other people are going to be prosecuted, I've always said that it was tough because you have a case that occurred years ago. And you know what happens when you have these old cases, old and cold cases, memories fade, witnesses die, evidence spoils. And here, I realize there are a lot of people very skeptical about what's going on with the prosecutions and whether they're protecting people. But according to this Politico article, someone who was in the Department of Justice, they address it by saying the following. Many theories have been floated in recent years about why prosecutors did not bring charges against more people in addition to Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell over the course of the first Trump and Biden administrations. Maybe someone was corrupt. Maybe someone blackmailed someone, etc. The answer appears to be much more pedestrian. The prosecutors in charge of the case at the time of Epstein's death concluded that they did not have sufficient evidence to charge anyone else. You can read much of the line prosecutor's analysis in our internal DOJ memo entitled Investigation into Potential Co-Conspirators of Jeffrey Epstein that they prepared in December 2019, several months after Epstein died, for the U.S. Attorney in Manhattan at the time. Much of it is redacted, but the unredacted portions provide key insights into prosecutors' thinking and make clear the serious evidentiary obstacles that they encountered in the course of their work alongside the FBI. The memo described some of the victims' accounts of Epstein and Maxwell's crimes in horrifying detail and concluded that Epstein had created a vast network of underage victims with the assistance of employees and associates who facilitated his exploitation of minors. Deep in the memo, prosecutors addressed the claim made by Virginia Giuffre, one of Epstein's most vocal accusers, that she and others had been lent out to other men for sex. But prosecutors reported that they had been unable to corroborate those claims. Giuffre had specifically named several other women. But prosecutors said that Giuffre's claim was inconsistent with the recollection of one victim, who did not recall ever being told to have sex with any men other than Epstein, and with the separate recollection of another victim, who did not describe ever being told to have sex with any men other than Epstein. The memo also stated that no other victim has described being expressly directed by either Maxwell or Epstein to engage in sexual activity with any other men. The memo went on to identify several other issues that prosecutors had identified with Giuffre's credibility. Among them were that Giuffre had engaged in a continuous stream of public interviews about her allegations, many of which have included sensationalized, if not demonstrably inaccurate, characterizations of her experiences. That she had written a partially fictionalized account of her experience with Epstein and Maxwell, that her own account in an interview with FBI agents had been internally inconsistent, and that she had admitted to lying about her employment history on her resume, admitted to burning handwritten notes that she had made about her experiences with Epstein and Maxwell, and admitted that she inaccurately told a reporter that she was abused by Epstein for 4 years when she was only with him for about 2 years. The prosecution's findings are consistent with what other media outlets have reported based on their review of the files to date. The Associated Press, for instance, concluded that the FBI collected ample proof that Jeffrey Epstein sexually abused underage girls, but found scant evidence the well-connected financier led a sex trafficking ring serving powerful men. Law enforcement did not simply turn a blind eye to potential misconduct by men in Epstein's circle. As the Wall Street Journal noted, prosecutors probed allegations of sexual assault made against billionaire Leon Black and the former banking executive Jess Staley, and ultimately referred them to state law enforcement authorities. That is likely because victims were adults at the time of the alleged offenses, and as the FBI explains on its website, when the charges involve the potential sex trafficking of adults, the government has to prove that the victim engaged in commercial sex acts as a result of fraud, force, or coercion. That showing is not necessary when the case involves a minor. That particular evidence appears to have been lacking in those cases, and as a result, prosecutors evidently concluded that the most relevant possible offenses would be crimes like rape, which were handled at the state level, though charges were never filed. Okay, so just to give you my thoughts on this. First, Epstein clearly was demonic. I mean, just an awful, evil individual, and Ghislaine Maxwell was the devil's accomplice. When it comes to proving that other individuals were engaged in sex trafficking, were co-conspirators, it's just not so easy for prosecutors. You have to have corroboration. And Virginia Giuffre, may she rest in peace, and she lived a life of trauma and really, quite frankly, of hell. I mean, she was put through in her book, and she describes it throughout her whole life. But because she had some issues with some of the things she had said that were not corroborated, and others that were admitted not to be completely accurate, that is a reason why she was not put on the stand in the Ghislaine Maxwell case. She was not one of the victims there. She did not testify. The government did not put her on the stand. And she was a leading voice against Epstein, and I'm thankful that she spoke out. But a reason why you have not seen prosecutions of other individuals is because the evidence against other individuals has not been corroborated to where you can bring a cold case against someone. Now, could you go after them civilly? Sure, you have a much lower burden. It's just preponderance of the evidence is more likely than not, and there are civil lawsuits. But as far as criminal prosecutions, I do believe that if the evidence were there, that you would have seen some. And I know people are saying, well, this administration is not going to do it. But remember, you also had the Biden administration, which looked at it. I don't believe the Biden administration is covering up for anyone. And as far as, well, what about the lack of documents that are being released? 3 million documents that are not being released. Yeah, it looks bad. And there should be more transparency. Because as long as there is secrecy in this case, as long as they're hiding stuff, it's just going to breed more conspiracy theories. And also, it leads people to say, well, there's a cover-up going on. Well, that's why this administration needs to release more documents. It's better for them. It's better for justice. It's better for the survivors. And hopefully they'll get full justice. And hopefully, if there is corroboration and the evidence shows that other individuals were participating in this, meaning that if they're underage girls, it does not have to be force, fraud, or coercion. If it's adults, then it's much harder. It's much harder to prosecute. We saw that with Diddy. So I think that this column, written by someone who is from the Department of Justice originally, who writes for Politico magazine and who has appeared on lots of shows, including MS Now, I do think that he's onto something, that there needs to be more corroboration. And just because we haven't seen more prosecutions doesn't mean that there is corruption in the decision not to prosecute. It could just be that there's just not enough evidence yet. but there should be more transparency because we still don't know it all. And when that day comes, I think that justice will be at least partially served. I'm Dave Ehrenberg, aka the Florida Lawman. If you like this video, hit subscribe, share with a friend, leave a comment below. Thank you for all your support, and I'll see you next time.